Here we go. So this will be my final video for a few days, but I thought I would drop something today that, is kind of inspired by a game that I played today. And that is 10 common mistakes that new MyTeam players make. Now, if you've seen the title of the video, you'll also see that I'm giving away 75k VC. So it's the first giveaway we've ever done. The reason I'm doing it is two reasons. One, it's the holiday period and I'm in a good mood. The second one is we have doubled our subs over the last sort of 2 weeks. Our views have gone up by about 1,000%. I mean, it's just crazy what you guys are doing right now. I want to thank you again. And the best way for me to thank you is to drop a giveaway and give away some VC and some of my hard-earned cash. I'm just kidding. No, it's not that hard-earned. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about that stuff at the end of the video, and I'll tell you how to sort of join that competition to get that reward. But I want to talk about this, the kind of mistakes. It's largely inspired, like I said, by a game I played today, but also some of the conversations I have. And I think some of these mistakes are by new players. And I think some longer-term players are also probably still making the same mistakes. Now, this isn't sort of an insult or an attack on anyone. It's me trying to help you, because I can confidently say every mistake, all 10 of these, I've made. And sometimes I continue to make them. Even now, I looked through some of the list. I kind of put the list together and I was like, I still do some of these things now, without question. So the game that inspired me to do this is a game that I loaded into today. And you can see the guy's squad. My instinct immediately was just to check out, to be honest. I wasn't even going to bother playing the game. I'd literally just come back from a 20-point sort of comeback in the last game. And I lost the footage of that game, which really annoyed me. So I loaded in again to record more footage for this gameplay. And I just loaded up against this squad. And his bench is probably more expensive than his starters. He's got a 95 overall. I'm running an 86 overall. I am running a 10-man, but, we've got budgety players, Steve Francis, Clay Thompson. And, I'm going to talk about that stuff as this video goes on. So my instinct was to check out of the game. But then I played the game and it just didn't go how I expected. And you'll see as the game, goes on, I played really, really badly in this game. Like, it was probably the worst I've played in a game for a long, long time. And I talk about myself being an average player and, a lot of people don't believe that I'm an average player. I am, and this gameplay will definitely prove that. But I just played so badly. I couldn't hit a shot to, save my life in the first half. Just everything was going wrong. But there was things that happened. Like, I think there was things about my opponent, that lineup, how he was playing the game, that just made me go, you know what? I think I should drop this video, because if you are like this guy, it will help you. It definitely will help you. So the first and probably one of the most common mistakes is spending money before you learn how to play the game. It's built into 2K's sort of psychology that if you have better players, you will win the game. And as you'll see this gameplay unfold, you know that's not always the case. Now, if you're amazing at the game, then having amazing players does make the difference. But if you're not great at the game yet, if you're still learning, if you're new, it doesn't really give you any benefit in having these crazy sort of overpowered players. But it's more about the kind of cost. You don't want to be buying VC, ripping packs, all of this stuff to go out and get a God squad if you don't really know how to use it yet. There's a lot of weight in using like lower tier cards. You can see in this gameplay I'm using, lower tier cards. I've got, Ruby, Steph Curry on the bench. I've got Rex Chapman, Steve Francis. There's loads of like budgety players that are good. I know how to use those players. That's why they're good. Obviously, if I had Derrick Rose instead of Steve Francis, he might play a little bit better, but not a huge amount better. I mean, I'm going to do the same thing with both cards, and it's not really going to make a huge difference. So avoid spending money at the start. I did. I spent £8 when the game, when I first got 2K20. I pulled a couple of bronzes, and then that was the end of that. So it is normal to do that, but don't feel like you need to. Get some cheaper players, play domination, TTO, things like that. You can generate loads of MT, and then you can buy a really good squad these days for about 100k, to be honest. So the second thing is looking for sort of cheat sheets and shortcuts and things like that. Look, every sort of YouTuber and every person who gives you advice, they all have different tactics, and they all say those things that work 100% of the time for them. First of all, 100% of the time, it doesn't work for them. It's really important to understand that. I give out a lot of advice on this channel. It's stuff that works for me that might work for you too. But you need to learn the game. There is no shortcut, I dropped a series on how an average player goes 12-0. And that title was correct, because I am an average player and I went 12-0 and I showed you how I did it. But it doesn't mean that's exactly what you're going to do and you're going to load in and you're going to go 12-0 first time. There is an element of progress and learning and adapting and all these different things that, a better player will do in a game that will result in them having success. So don't look for like a one-stop shortcut. Like, there is no video out there that's just going to go, bang, you're going to win 100% of your games. That video just doesn't exist. So just focus on improving. That's really what you need to do. Everything outside of that will be a kind of benefit on top of improving the game, right? You be good at the game, then you add in all these other settings and these kind of, you know, exploits or whatever, and you can do really well. But you need to learn the game first. There is no one-stop shop to 100% win ratio. It just doesn't exist. So that brings us on to my third point, which is to focus on improving instead of winning, right? So when I first started playing MyTeam, it was around March this year I started playing. And I used to play unlimited and things like that. And you know, I used to be terrible. Like, my win percentage then was probably about 10%. Because I'd go into every game. I didn't really know how to play it yet, but I'd go into every game and I had good players and all of this stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I'm definitely going to win this game. And then some guy with a couple of bronzes would run me over. And I'd be like, well, how did that happen? It must be the game. It wasn't the game. It was me. I just wasn't good enough yet. The key thing that I didn't do at the start of this game is shoot the ball. Like, I just didn't shoot. I don't know. I don't know if that's a common thing. You let me know. I just didn't shoot because I couldn't. There's lag and delay and all of these things. And I was so used to playing offline, and online it's just so different. So when I went online, I would just run the rim again and again. So I was just loading into every game, running the rim, hoping I would win the game, rather than learning how to shoot, or learning how to get shooters open, or adapting to the delay, and all of these different things. Just winning was everything. So my entire experience of this game was just loading into one unlimited game after another, wanting to win the game. Most of the time I didn't win the game, and I would just get really frustrated, because for me, winning was the only thing that mattered. I didn't realise there were steps you need to take to get to that point where you can win games. So care less about winning games. It doesn't matter if you lose. It literally doesn't matter if you lose a game. Just focus on getting better. So the next thing is buying players because a YouTuber told you to buy them. Okay, look, this is a good example of mistakes that even the most experienced players, you know, just make again and again. If you saw my budget squad video yesterday, you'll see the team that I ran. And I had De'Aaron Fox as my starting point guard. Now, if I'd listened to any YouTuber out there, my starting point guard would have been Amethyst CP3. Now, I prefer De'Aaron Fox. He's just a better player for me and my playstyle and what I like to do in a game. You know, it's so often that I just run into the same starting five, or, you know, whatever. There's just the same players again and again. And I know it's because they've gone online and they've caught a YouTuber saying these players are amazing, and then they've loaded into the game. Listen, if you can't shoot, there's no point having a shooter. If you can't, you know, get to the rim, there's no point having players that are strong at the rim. Like, if you can't, like, the most common thing, right? Like, centers that can shoot. Like, it's just a play in the game. Like, it doesn't have to be a center that can shoot. You can learn to play without that, and it might be better for you if you do. So, make up your own mind. Like, just because a player works for a global champion doesn't mean it's going to work for someone who's been playing the game for 2 days, right? Like, it's about what you do and your play style, how you approach the game, that the right players are there. Like, the average person wouldn't be loading into Unlimited with the squad I'm loading into in this game. But I know this squad, I'm fairly comfortable with it, it works for me, I've won games with them, so this is a perfectly decent squad for me to be running. Now, if I was just listening to YouTubers exclusively to build my squad, I would be spending, you know, £100, $100 a week trying to get the brand new shiny card. And there's a lot of really overpowered cards that I'm really bad with. Like Kevin Durant's release last year and this year, I just cannot get it down. So I picked him up for the XP. I was going to keep him, but I couldn't hit a 3 with him. I just couldn't do it. So it wasn't a good card for me. I went and got Cam Reddish instead to run at small forward. So it's about the players that work for you and your play style. Now, following on from that, I'm going to talk about settings from YouTubers, right? So this is something I used to do a lot. I'd go online and I'd try and find the perfect settings. I'd watch a video here, a video there, and okay, well, this guy's saying that works, and then you'll see another video and it's a complete opposite, and you're like, well, that works as well. The answer is none of it works. All of it works and none of it works. That's the reality. Having one set of settings, and again, this is a mistake that a lot of you know, more experienced players make as well. I change my settings as the game goes on, right? There's so many games. I told you I played a game earlier where I came back from being 20 points down. It was settings that I changed that game. So I do have a starting setting that I use. You know, everyone should have that. But then you've got to adapt as the game goes on. But don't copy settings from a YouTuber, because a YouTuber will have used those settings for maybe 10 years. They're really comfortable. They know how to work them. You know, they've had a huge amount of experience, which is why they're good with them. And if you run various different settings consistently, you'll get good with them too. So you won't have to use just one set that works for someone else. Next up, we have, you know, using one strategy in a game. So I'm not talking about settings now. I'm talking about your approach, your strategy. So a lot of people I play, and the guy I'm playing now, you know, he was really just focused on shooting threes the whole game. There is a lifespan that's going to have. If you come up against a competent player and you're only rim running, or you're only shooting threes, or you're only running pick and rolls, or you're only spamming plays, any competent player will figure out how to stop you fairly early in the game. You're going to make your life really, really difficult. So again, this is about variety. Just make sure you're practicing everything. Just because you're not good at something now doesn't mean you won't be good at it, you know, a week later. Practice is what helps. Freestyle is a really good tool in MyTeam. Use it as much as you can. Like I said, practice shooting, things like that. And learn different plays and different ways of getting past the opponent so you don't become predictable and therefore take way more losses than you need to. So the next thing I could have included probably in a different sort of subheading, but it's so common that I feel like it needs to be spoken about on its own. Off-balling and paint sitting. Paint sitting specifically, off-balling less, because I think the best defense is a combination of on-ball and off-ball. But paint sitting is, again, it's just everywhere. You're seeing people running god squads in paint sitting. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So it's similar to what I've said in the kind of last 2 points. If someone figures out what you're doing, it's so easy to beat it. Because the one thing with off-balling is if you rely on it exclusively, as soon as someone starts beating that paint sitting strategy, you don't have a plan B. All right? So my approach to this, if I see someone paint sitting, I just start putting up shots. I'll start hitting mid-range, things like that. I'm fairly confident with my shooting now. And I will win that game. I haven't lost a game, I think, this year to a paint sitter. I don't think it's happened. So, and again, I'm average. You're watching the gameplay. I'm not playing particularly well. If you take this road, if you're going to off-ball, and the reason you're doing that, again, is going back to an earlier point, because you just want to win games. You don't want to get better. It's a matter of time before you start taking multiple L's in this game. So the next thing is understanding MT. And again, like I was new to the game, like I said, in March. And the way I handled my MT, like I look back on it and I'm like, I was just wasting hundreds of thousands of MT, right? MT is hard to come by, especially if you're not spending money. So you've got to learn how to understand MT, learn when to sell players, when to buy players. You need to understand what sniping is. I've got videos on loads of this stuff. A lot of other YouTubers do as well. Just learn this stuff. Like, it's really, really important. I remember last year I had a couple of players that I really liked and I ran with them a little bit too long. And maybe I picked them up for 150k and suddenly found myself selling them for 20k. So just keep an eye on the players. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the market. Know when to pick a player up as well when the market crashes. This season it's fairly straightforward. Things like super packs and stuff like that are crashing the market. Just learn all of that stuff and you'll find yourself having much more options throughout the year to pick up players because you've kind of preserved your MT really well. The next thing is a really common thing. So I'm part of a lot of sort of Facebook groups and things like that. And in a lot of those groups, you see someone come out and go, I'm really struggling with X, right? And let's say it's defense. And there'll be like 50 responses, right? There'll be 50 responses to that guy's post just asking for help with defense. And you will have 50 different responses, okay? And a lot of those responses I see, they're really good bits of advice, you know, and they will help that person, obviously new to the game if they're struggling with defense and people don't seem to understand that. But there's a lot of advice that's really, really good, you know, basics, like make sure you're playing on-ball defense because you get a boost and things like that. And then you will see some really, really bad advice. And usually this bad advice is basically copy and pasted from some YouTuber's webpage going, if you run these settings, you'll win. Listen, if you're going to go after advice, I've said this a few times, ask the credentials of the guy who's giving you advice. I think it's really, really important. I've got stick for this in the past, but I am going to double down on it because I got so much bad advice when I started playing this game. If you run these settings, you'll definitely win. I loaded into a game and I took an L straight away. Like, if the person has had a significant amount of success with those settings, that's the starting point. If that person has had no success with those settings, why would you want to copy or take advice from a person where it's not working for them, right? It's, again, them just grabbing a random YouTuber's settings and then chucking them into a post. It has to work for them. Like, it has to work for them, and then they need to be able to elaborate on why it works for them, right? So if you're going to go after advice, find someone who is having success in the game and ask them for advice. Don't just put it out into the ether and expect to get some really productive responses, because it would just confuse the hell out of you. And again, this is something I did back in the day. I used to put up a post going, I'm struggling with this, or which card should I pick up, which player should I pick up. There isn't an answer to that question. Like, there isn't. What player should I pick up? It would depend on the player you are. Depends on your play style. Depends on your approach. It depends on your mentality. It depends on a huge amount of different things. So I would avoid putting anything out into ether, because it would just confuse you. Go and find someone. Most YouTubers will respond to your messages. Like, Ty Debo is the global champion. Go and send him a message. He will answer your questions. Like, you know, I was going back and forth with him on Twitter yesterday. He will answer your messages. Shout out to Ty Debo for including me in his last video, by the way. I really appreciate that. We were on the start bench cut video, and I agreed with his selection. So, number 10. This is the final thing. Don't take this game too seriously. It's just not that big. It can be so stressful. It can be so defeating. There's so many things in the game. Like, you talk about the 12-0, and if you lose a game, there's so much stress that's built into this game. But don't let it get to you. It's so important to remember that this is just a game. It's just a game. In 2 weeks, nothing you do now is going to matter. So just humble yourself. Take losses if you have to. Do all of that stuff. And just work on getting better at the game. It's, you know, I'm literally going to break this down. I've won 91 games right after this game. 91 games this season. I've lost 13. In none of those 91 games did I feel the need to start flopping on the court, sending spiteful messages, jumping on the mic, all of this stuff. 10 of those 13 games that I lost, someone did something toxic. I mean, it's just, why? Why? You're really good at the game, obviously, you know. You don't need to sort of shout about it. And this is where it doesn't become a game anymore. It becomes something quite dark at times, to be honest. I've seen some really dark stuff out there. So just remember it's a game. If you lose, it doesn't matter. If you win, just be like graceful in victory. Like, it doesn't matter, because your karma's going to come. No one's got 100% win ratio. So that's everything. So now on to the bigger stuff. I'm going to talk about the 75k VC giveaway. Now, if you want to win that VC, and you know, you could rip Kobe packs and stuff like that, it's a pretty good time to drop some VC. This is all I want you to do. I want you to leave a comment below. You have to be subscribed, of course. And just tell me how you found my channel, because we've had an explosion and I don't understand why. I really want to understand why. I think it'd be really cool to know that, so I can get something out of it too. So just drop a comment down below. Let me know how you found this channel, and you know, maybe any other comments you want to add. I'm going to pick a winner at random on the 1st of January, so you've got a week or so to get it done. It is this video only that you drop a comment on, so drop it down below. I hope this video helped you guys. I'm really excited for the next few days. I'm going to take some time off, and we're going to upload again in a few days. Enjoy the sort of holiday period. So I'm wishing you guys a happy holidays, and until next time, thanks for watching, guys.